Welcome everybody, I'm Santiago Nieland and this is The Divine Within, the invisible connection with God. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about the redefinition of the cross. I have with me April Helen, a longtime reader and friend, and we're going to be really unpacking for what we really think and perceive as the meaning of the cross, what really happened. Because for 2,000 years, the cross has been one of the most recognized symbols in human history. It has been worn, worshipped, feared, and misunderstood. For many people, it represents guilt, sacrifice, and a God who required suffering in order to forgive. But what if the cross was never meant to inspire fear? What if it was meant to reveal love? In this episode of The Divine Within, we explore a powerful reframe offered through the teachings of the Urantia Book, that the cross didn't change God's attitude towards humanity, it revealed it. Together we move from the traditional idea of atonement to something far more personal and transformative, the living experience of aligning our lives with divine love. So welcome, April Helen, it's a pleasure having you here.
It's always a joy to be here. Aloha, y'all, all across the globe in this holy season that many on the planet consider and celebrate one of our great master teachers who roam the earth. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's really an interesting and reflective time always, Easter season. So it's good that we have this topic, which I think it's very interesting, and I think if we understand the true meaning and really what is behind all of this, it becomes a very powerful symbol. Not only a symbol that unites let's say a faith, but it really gives you a powerful tool. So. Let's go from this concept that we were giving, which is the breaking the myth of the atonement, or stripping the myth of the atonement. And for centuries, the story surrounding the cross has been told in a very specific way: that humanity sinned, that God required justice, and that Jesus was sent to pay the price. But what if the story missed the heart of Jesus' message? In the Urantia Book, we offer a very interesting and we see a very profound reinterpretation that the cross was never about appeasing an angry God, but about revealing the loving nature of a divine Father. In this segment, we begin by gently questioning the traditional idea of atonement and opening the door to a far more liberating understanding of the cross. So, April Helen, this is a very I don't want to say touchy, but it's a very polarizing topic, which is the atonement. Did God really send His only child to rid the sins of humanity? What was really behind all this sacrifice, let's say, of Jesus in the cross?
Yes, and wasn't it on a recent podcast with you and Derek that you have touched on this idea that directly relates to the reframing, redefining this vision of what we understand the cross to be in regards to it being directly related to what some call original sin,
Mm-hmm.
and the idea that Jesus was sent to lay down his life, and how beautiful of a sentiment that is. Yet from my understanding of the new revelation that is brought with the Urantia Book and all of my studies for the last 30 plus years in the self-improvement, where accountability and self-responsibility, taking responsibility for the things that you do. We were
Mm-hmm.
not born into original sin, and Jesus came to show us how to live, how God would live as a human walking this earth. And what a guidebook. And I love the paper of, I think it's a section called The Acme of Religious Living.
Mm-hmm.
I've
Okay.
mentioned this in this podcast before, where it describes Jesus's very well balanced character, and
Yeah.
he was this person of good cheer, yet he also was firm in giving this new way to undo all of the preconceived notions that may have been misunderstood before. He was a fan of service and also turning tables at the money people in front of the church. You know, he was firm in this new way. So
Gentle but firm. Yeah.
yeah, such a equanimity
Equanimous. Yes.
when within his character. So I love this idea of the in the Urantia book, it says that our planet, Urantia, for all of the neighboring planets in the celestial organization of the super universes, that we are known as the world of the cross. And
Exactly.
it is an endearing name as far as their vision of us, because they understand that Jesus didn't come here to save anybody and be sacrificed like a lamb, shedding blood. No, it is the new idea of he came here to show us how to live, and really
Exactly.
embracing that as we move forward in our day-to-day art of living.
And this is the basis. I mean, I think we before we reframe the atonement and re-understand what it really means, what the cross really means, we have to, like you said, go back into what the original sin, and what we know and what biblical uh, stories or biblical accounts tell us is that Adam and Eve came and they sinned, and we are all guilty of that sin. Number one, I think we're not accountable for somebody else's sin, so which is something that I always, when I was brought up. In Sunday school and in church and Catholicism, they told you about this, and it kind of didn't make sense to me, because how come if you're supposed to be accountable for yourself, how come you have this original sin upon you? And so that sets everything up. I mean, we're damned. We're even if we didn't do it, we're in that pickle. So we needed somebody to come and save us from that. And this is what Jesus is, in theory. Well, not in theory, but I think a lot of this, from what I understand, was not from his life and teachings, but later from the scholars, the early church scholars, the early Christian scholars, that really kind of wove that in, that concept of being the sacrificial lamb, and making all those comparisons, and eventually will make that concept and that practice or teaching of the atonement. You know.
Definitely. And I love, as you and I appreciate redefining and reframing and regrowing anew, that this is a popular phrase these days among not only your ancient book readers, yet a new wave of Christians, of this shift from the atonement to at-one-ment.
I like
And
that.
I put on my glasses because I want to read this section in paper 88, paper 88, section 4, the meaning of the death on the cross. And although Jesus didn't die his death on the cross to atone for the racial guilt of mortal man, nor to provide some sort of effective approach to an otherwise offended and unforgiving God, we dot 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 we move into the fact that Urantia has become known as the world of the cross, and Jesus desired to live a full mortal life so that this interpretation of the death on the cross, we can be careful not to make the great mistake of failing to perceive the true significance of his mortal death. And that in itself is such a awe-inspiring, um, comforting, right? And to wash away that fear that seems to be set in humanity when I too was in Sunday school and didn't
Hmm.
understand why this, you say it's an all loving, all merciful God, and
Exactly.
yet there's also this piece that doesn't seem all loving and merciful. And it, so now in this new era, as we have this new revelation within the Urantia book, we get to see the magnificence and an expanded version. If people don't know out there, if you're just a new student to the UB, that we get to see more of the context of Jesus's life and the conversations that he had with not only apostles, yet passersby on the street. And
Hmm.
then,
Yeah.
and then after the resurrection, we get what all of these, diatribes and all of the scenarios that he allows us to see even more of the art of living skills brought so that we can take them in and live a more value-based life. It's really inspiring.
And it's I like what you're talking about and the vision that it provides about Jesus because like as in any story, any good book, the rounder the character, the more the descriptions you have and the actions and interactions with other people is that you really discover the character, you discover their longings, their fears, and this is what really I like about this account of Jesus. It brings him so much to life, and or no, not to life, but close to us. And I think this is another part to really understand or redefine, as we were saying, the atonement. If you understand beyond what we have from the four gospels, where we do have this glorified Jesus, and we have what we know of all the what he is, which is a divine nature, but also the human nature, and how that as we struggle with our own material physical nature, he had to struggle through that. And one of the things that I think is very important, and it's important to mention here, is during his bestowal missions, which that we always think of the next podcast when we have this, but maybe next time we're going to talk about the bestowal missions. But one of the within the many missions or the many requirements or obligations that a creator son has is that they have to abide by in their different incarnations by the will of the either the Father, of the Son, of the, and in this case, when he incarnated as Jesus, it was doing the will of the Father. And it's very interesting that doing the will of the Father is that any and every creature has their own will. A willing creature can do whatever they will, and they, in the end, we willed, or this planet willed, to do that crucifixion. So it's interesting how instead, it's this redefinition is that he basically, you know, set his will aside, even if he was more powerful, if he was a creator son of these creatures that crucified him, he let their will be upon, be done instead of his, because that's how it works. That's very interesting.
It, it's really what an incredible scene that is described. And whether you're Urantia readers or not, you may know of one of some of his final words, "Forgive them. They know not what they do."
Hmm.
That is one of the key pillars of my life, and being able to accept as I live in the ideal that humanity is my family, the cosmos is my family, our family, to learn that everyone is intrinsically valuable, and to have this acceptance and forgiveness piece that is an ongoing technology within this experiment of spiritual beings living in these animalistic bodies on this planet. That is so, so powerful. I love that you brought that up. And the fact that he was given the choice, you have done your job.
Yeah,
You
this is
can
important.
you can be transported off the planet without having to go through the human death. And because of his just beingness as this great Michael son, creator son, as Santiago said, you have to go as that order of being in order to be full sovereign of your universe. You have to go through these incarnations to become your created being. So when I think it was when Adam and Eve made their choices, that's when the universe looked at Urantia to be the final
Mm-hmm.
bestowal of Jesus's seventh bestowal, to become an actual human. And how cool that it took Melchizedek then playing his role to get Abraham to attempt that, turning everybody from the poly to the
Yeah,
monotheism
yeah.
and one God theory, to pave the way for Jesus's coming.
Yeah,
Like,
all this time that it goes in planning, in between things. It's really the way that we experience the cross, and as we were saying, is really how we. You were saying the way that he died, and expressing in his last words, not for him but for the people that really crucifying him, and that sets the tone, and gives you in my case, for many struggles, it gives you the strength to really go through them. If you think of Jesus and you think of his strength in there, and in his character of how he endured all that process, it always is inspiring, and it helps you go through a lot of things, so that's really one of the powerful things about that as a symbol, which is what I want to go. On the Divine Within podcast, we'll share real conversations to help you find a personal connection with God. My goal is to support your faith, growth, and journey toward discovering the divine within yourself. Join us to deepen your faith and spiritual journey.